Do you feel like you are drowning in all the responsibilities and priorities you have in your life? I will be honest, sometimes I do feel like I'm drowning. Well, author of the new book, Take Back Your Time, Morgan TYREE, is here all this week helping us to start off the year on the right track, organized and ready to conquer the year. Hey, Morgan.
Hi.
So you start off a section of your book with a great quote from Stephen Covey, and it says, "The key is not to prioritize what's on your schedule, but to schedule your priorities." That hit me a lot when I read that. Explain why you thought that was an important quote to add to your book.
Well, I think we use the word priority and we talk about our priorities, but then we don't prioritize our priorities. So, right?
Yep.
So, what I mean is, we'll say an easy example we can all probably relate to is exercise. We'll say, exercise is important, or I want to exercise, but then we don't prioritize exercising. And so that's why that quote really resonated with me is I thought, well, if we want that to be a priority, then we need to schedule that and make it a priority. And so with that being said, I think we each individually have the freedom and the ability to also decide what our priorities are. We don't need to compare ourselves to the person next to us either. So, but I really like that quote because I think that just is spot on.
Yeah, you really hit me with the exercising thing because I think you're right. I think if it is a priority, we will make time for it. We'll make time for things that we care about. So true.
Absolutely.
So you say that we need to set your purposes, and so there are top 3 to 5 areas in our lives that we feel that we should be focused on, and that God is prompting us in order to live in a full season. Explain that and what that looks like.
Yeah, I think it's important to really look at your life and again, kind of thinking through what the season of life you're in and thinking through what are the main things that you are being called to work on or do. And for example, for me, a couple of those bigger purposes are I have work purposes and I have a big purpose is running our home. And then I have a big purpose of I'm still raising 3 teenagers and I'm married, so I have a big purpose in family. So those are just 3 of my very distinct purposes, for example. And I gave the number 3 to 5 just as kind of some guardrails because I don't think we can have 100 purposes per se, but then under the purposes, I encourage the readers to also identify the priorities because we can't just say everything is a priority either. And so if you're really clear on what your specific purposes are, and I use the word an umbrella, then you can then help yourself again navigating your yeses and your nos, and so you can know kind of how much you can take on within your purpose. And so you can say in this season these are my top 3 to 5 main things that I'm focusing on, and so then I can kind of filter in how many priorities to take on under each purpose.
And you have to be okay with saying no when you realize what your purposes are for that season.
Yes, for sure. And I think we often forget that every yes and every no has a ripple effect, positively and negatively, as far as just the consequences of it. And so being okay with saying no can be very freeing because when you say no or yes to something, it will have an effect into other parts of your life. And so if you can go back to just being really clear with what you're really focusing on in your current season and what your purposes are, it can actually give you more freedom in your decision making.
How hard was that for you when you realized I just need to narrow things down and figure out what are the 3 to 5 and just focus on that? Like, was that a challenge for you when you made that decision to do that and live that way?
Well, I know I'll be honest, I am by nature more of a people pleaser. And I also should mention I have a pretty high energy level. So saying no for me doesn't make me come as naturally as some people because I get excited by like taking on stuff. So that just is kind of a little backstory. But it has helped me though because I'll give an example. One of my purposes under my 5 is volunteering because I do have enough margin in my schedule, whether it's helping out with the school or I do some mentoring, some different things. But I was proposed with 3 different opportunities last year, and I turned all 3 of them down. And some of them were pretty easy no's for me, but just because I didn't really have the interest. But it also was The no's were easier because it was clear to me I didn't have the margin in my schedule because I could only take on so many volunteering roles under that purpose. So it just helped me to be more clear with that particular decision.
That's awesome. And I think it also avoids us from getting into burnout and burning out because we're trying to do everything and please everyone.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, thanks again, Morgan, for your time today. And tomorrow we're going to talk about time zones. You have an interesting take on how we can schedule our calendars. You're going to want to stay tuned for that tomorrow. Thanks again, Morgan.
Thank you.
Hey, gang, we are adding new and powerful stories every single day.
So if you haven't done it, hit subscribe and stay up to date with all of our latest content.
Do it.